Gorman, we'll somehow get it communicated to him. No, that's totally fine. I just wish I could story. So, alright. Is there anything else?
He's in San Diego. Yeah, no, you should. Because I don't even. He's in San Diego. He's got a few weeks where he starts Major League Soccer team. So he started Elenius. Yeah. He was in the NBA. He was doing the front office. He was doing he was jumping in front of Grizzlies and Trailblazers. And sports. He started Major League Soccer team. So he started LAFC. Just started SDS San Diego. Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's totally cool. Yeah, it's soccer. Just the fan base is here. So they sort of get but they take production this second.
We're gonna do that. Yeah. David, hi David. How are you? Good to see you. What?
And I think, yes, I get it, yeah.
People probably lucky when they get a hold of me because I'm not one of the people who judge you too much. I had one lady just 2 weeks ago.
Forgive me.
Hey, not right now. I guess I haven't stepped back out. It's things will continue.
Saving yourself. There we go.
All rise. 10th Judicial Circuit Court of Illinois is now in session. The Honorable Chief Judge Catherine Gorman presiding.
All right, everybody take a seat. I want to give a warm welcome to everyone, family, friends, and special guests. Retired judges Brandt, Lyons, Collier, Lucas, Borden, McCuskey, and Alt. Active judges, thank you for taking time out of your busy dockets to be here, including Judge Hannah from up the street. We're here today for the memorial service. The records date back to 1911, and I'd like to thank Dave Miller, who's been an integral part of this observance for decades, Stephanie Bittner, the Peoria County Bar Association, and court administration. The lawyers and judges who we lost this year are interwoven into our legal community and have had a deep and lasting impact. With each passing year, this year in particular, I am reminded of the professionals who were here when I started my career. And I'm going to use a quote today from, of all people, Dr. Seuss. Sometimes you will never know the value of a moment until it becomes a memory. I am grateful for those moments that are now poignant memories involving those we've lost. In the tradition of the fighting tense collegiality, the legacy of the professionals that we've lost this year is what we celebrate today. I'm going to make this announcement. Should anyone need to stretch or get up or step out, please feel free to do so. And with that, I'm going to turn the program over to Dave Miller.
Thank you, Your Honor. May it please the court, members of the judiciary, members of the Peoria County Bar Association, and friends and families of those whom we honor. This is one of the decided pleasures of my nearly 60 years of practice. Not just sharing in the practice and the fellowship of those whom we honor and those who are here, but remembering them with the fondness that accompanies this event. The 17th century English poet John Donne described the passage of generations best when he said, "Send not to know for whom the bell tolls, it tolls for thee." I suggest that each of you take a moment to look at the program you received. It lists each of the members of our association who have been remembered in this service over the years. As you can see, this is the 114th continuous memorial service presented by the Peoria County Bar Association, a tradition of which we are rightfully proud. This is a good thing we do today In paying tribute to our departed friends and colleagues, we reflect not only upon their lives and accomplishments, but also upon the gifts and good fortune which enable us to contribute to the rule of law and our community. They are the blocks upon which we build. It is our responsibility to build the next level. A memorial will be orally given today and in written form will be spread upon the records of the Peoria County Bar Association. Today, we honor Robert D. Jackson, Karen L. Kendall, Henry L. Gentry, Honorable David J. Dubicki, Arthur R. Kingery, Kevin William Tilton, Thomas J. Penn, Jr., Wayne L. Hanold, Donald R. Jackson, Sr., Honorable Richard Eagleton, John E. Mitchell, Honorable John Gorman, William M. Elenius, John F. Luck, and Linda L. Reeri. Following the formal presentation of the memorials, and as is traditional, the floor will be open to remembrances and reminiscences of those whom we honor by persons who are in attendance. The first memorial is presented for Henry L. Gentry by Richard N. Gentry.
Begging your indulgence, I'm going out of order here because we had an incident today. Henry's widow, Sandra, came down to attend the service, and we met her at lunch by Bradley, and we're going to lunch at One World when she tripped on the sidewalk up there, fell and broke her nose and broke a tooth, and is now in the emergency room at OSF. And so I'm going to give my presentation, and then I'm just going to leave to get back to the emergency room. And my apologies for leaving early. And once again, I thank you for your indulgence. To the family and friends of Henry L. Gentry, members of the judiciary, Peoria County Bar Association, guests. I thank the Peoria County Bar Association and David B. Miller, Chairman of the Memorials Committee, for the privilege of presenting this memorial resolution in honor and recognition of my friend and brother, Hank Gentry. Hank was born in Wichita, Kansas in 1948 in the same hospital where I was born, St. Francis. He was the third child of 8 and 4 years younger than me, quite an age difference in our younger years, but not so much in later years as we both started and continued our higher education at the University of Illinois in the fall of 1966. He is a freshman undergraduate and me is a freshman law student. Hank received his BA from the University of Illinois, Chicago in June of 1971 and graduated from Loyola Law School in February 1975. He was then admitted to the Illinois Bar in April and began his legal career that year in downstate Illinois, practicing in Springfield and Petersburg until coming to Peoria, where he practiced until 1986. He then accepted a position with a firm located in the Chicago suburbs, which did insurance defense work for Liberty Mutual Insurance Company. The firm ultimately became known as Capper & Gentry, and he practiced there until he retired in 2008. While in Peoria, Hank was active in the Peoria Jaycees and was heavily involved in the Peoria Riverfront Project, which produced the first 4th of July fireworks display on the riverfront in 1980, and which demonstrated that people would go to the riverfront in downtown Peoria for such an event. As I recall, a reported 100,000 people viewed the fireworks from both sides of the river and also on the river. He received a number of local, state, and national awards for the project. Hank also served in various offices of the Jaycees and as president in 1982 to 1983. Hank and his family enjoyed camping out west in Colorado, Wyoming, Utah, and Montana, and took a number of rafting trips to the Grand Canyon on the Colorado River. On one of their rafting excursions, he heard a guide suggest that compared to the Grand Canyon, those on the rafting trip were but pygmies. He remembered this, and for years thereafter, his vehicle license plates were inscribed with the words, "But pygmy." Hank also enjoyed hiking, coaching his daughter Amy's soccer team, and after he retired, volunteering at the Morton Arboretum near Chicago. He and his wife Sandy also enjoyed riding a recumbent tandem bicycle with the Chicago Area Tandem Society, known as the Cats, and with me and my wife on numerous trips, including 2 traversing the Katy Trail in Missouri from Sedalia to St. Charles, and several rails to trails, bicycle trails in Wisconsin. Also numerous Labor Day weekends and tandem rallies held in various mid-sized cities throughout the Midwest. And we went on numerous adventures with our travel trailers, which also included time for tandem bicycle rides, and we traveled together on trips to Europe. Hank was preceded in death by our parents, Dick and Betty, and is survived by his wife Sandra, daughter Amy, son Kenneth, and grandchildren Corey, Joe, Mason, Alice, and Luna. I miss Hank and our get-togethers for camping, bicycling trips, and travel abroad. And his presence at our Gentry family events is and will be greatly missed. Therefore, be it resolved by the membership of the Peoria County Bar Association, express our deepest sympathy and sorrow on the passing of our colleague and friend Henry L. Gentry, as well as our appreciation for his life, his dedication to the law, and his friendship. Be it further resolved that the Secretary of the Peoria County Bar Association should forward a copy of this memorial resolution to his wife Sandra, daughter Amy, son Kenneth, and grandchildren. Respectfully submitted this 22nd day of May, 2025. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. The next memorial is presented for Robert D. Jackson by Roger E. Holtzgraf.
To the family and friends of Robert D. Jackson, members of the Judiciary, Peoria County Bar Association, and guests. Grateful to the Peoria County Bar Association and to Dave Miller, Chairman of the Association's Memorial Committee, for the privilege of presenting this memorial resolution in honor and in recognition of Robert D. Jackson. I'm hopeful I can do justice in this endeavor for Bob and his family. I understand his widow, Mary Jane, and other family members are present today. Bob was born November 10th, 1932 in Metropolis, Illinois. He married Mary Jane on December 5, 1959. He was a proud father of 2 children, his daughter Deb and son Jeff, doting grandfather for 2 grandchildren and 2 great-grandsons. Even though Bob was from Metropolis, he was not faster than a speeding bullet, not more powerful than a locomotive, and not able to reach tall buildings at a single bound. So after graduating from Metropolis Community High School, Bob pursued his education at Southern Illinois University in Carbondale, graduated in 1954, and at the University of Illinois College of Law, graduated in 1959, with a tour of duty in the United States Army in between. Bob worked several jobs to cover the expense of his undergraduate and law school educations, from which he exited free of any student debt. A current law school graduate, upon learning that someone actually completed this educational process free of student debt, might actually say, "That's super." Bob was a well-respected attorney with the firm of Westerveld, Johnson, Nickel, and Keller, serving as insurance defense counsel for the insurance company clients of the firm, and in particular State Farm Insurance Company, and as workers' compensation defense counsel. And as for all those we recognize today, Bob loved his family and the time spent with him. He was a St. Louis Cardinals fan. Perhaps all those we recognize today were not. Enjoyed photography, reading, and exercising. Now, the interest in exercising was particularly important, as it enabled Bob to enjoy golf at least weekly, well into his 80s, which he did as a member at Arrowhead Country Club. Yes, Bob enjoyed golf. No, Bob really enjoyed golf. He was a passionate golfer and was on a never-ending search for the perfect driver or the perfect putter. Oh, were it that simple. So let me now paint the picture of one truly avid and passionate golfer. Bob's relationship with State Farm personnel certainly fostered his golf game. I joined the firm as an associate attorney in 1973. I had taken the bar exam in August of that year. My very first day at the office was the Tuesday after Labor Day. Unbeknownst to me on that day, there was to be a insurance adjuster's outing on Friday. Bob, who was in a partner, came to me that day and asked if I played golf. I said, yes, but I only played twice in law school. Nevertheless, he made sure I was invited as one of the Westfield attorneys to attend the outing. Now, in retrospect, I think it was because Bob was the only real golfer in the firm, and he was planning, or perhaps plotting, to get me paired with him at these outings. And how did this planning or plotting turn out? Well, further in retrospect, I think he made certain he afforded me the opportunity to work with him on various matters. For example, he took me with him to a deposition even before I had been sworn in. On the way to the deposition, while he gave me some guidance on the upcoming deposition, we primarily talked golf. Then, the day after I was sworn in, he came to me and said, "Roger, a very good claim firm just called, told me he had filed a pro se complaint in Tazewell County Small Claims Court. The trial was scheduled for 2 days hence. He was getting cold feet to proceed without counsel, as there would be counsel on the other side, and asked him if he could handle the trial. Bob told him no, but said, I would send somebody else to conduct the trial. I was that someone. Of course, Bob presumably declined to handle the matter on a purely economic basis because the amount at issue was $40 and a pair of glasses. But in further retrospect, I think it was part of his continuing effort to get me involved with golf. And by the way, I did not prevail on that case. Next, Bob asked me to accompany him to Quincy in Adams County for a hearing on a pending motion for summary judgment. Quincy is my hometown, and the wife of the judge hearing the matter had been one of my grade school teachers. Ostensibly, this was to help my learning curve as an attorney, but what did we talk about during the drive to and from Quincy? Golf. One result of this golfing banter was being paired with Bob at various adjuster and client golf outings. And I mentioned earlier that Bob played a lot of golf with various State Farm personnel. He was part of a group of State Farm personnel who would go to Florida every year February to play golf for a week. Bob invited me to join him. Well, I typically declined because the only persons I knew who were going were Bob and one State Farm claim superintendent. And I understood the trip could involve as many as 16 different individuals. Part of my concern was I didn't know the others. I didn't know if some of the others were motivated to go on the trip primarily for the post-golf liquid refreshments and perhaps other post-golf carousing. I certainly did not expect Bob or the State Farm claim superintendent I knew to be so motivated, but simply did not know. Then the wife of the State Farm claim superintendent passed. I attended the funeral and went to the post-funeral luncheon where the claim superintendent asked me, "Roger, why don't you come on the golf trip this year?" Well, he had just lost his wife, and out of a sense of wanting to be helpful, I said yes. But I had a plan. I was wanting to be certain that I rented one of the vans so I could always control who was driving the van. As it turned out, there were 16 individuals, and lo and behold, a few of the individuals considered the trip to be the opportunity to pursue that post-golf liquid refreshment and a fair amount of carousing. Neither Bob nor the claim superintendent were involved, but the guy I was rooming with certainly was. The second day of the trip, he returned to the room at 6:15 a.m. as I was just getting up to play golf. And golf it was. Bob and I would fly out on a Monday morning to Tampa St. Pete from the Peoria International Airport. Upon arrival, we headed to the golf course where we had a reserved tee time and played 18 holes of golf. Then on Tuesday, we played 36 holes at a different course. Then on Wednesday, we played 36 holes again at a different course. Then on Thursday, we played 36 holes at a different course. Then on Friday, we played 36 holes on a different course. Are you seeing a pattern here? Saturday and Sunday, we played 36 holes each day and again a different course. Then on Monday, we played 18 holes in the morning before heading to the airport to return home. 252 holes of golf in 1 week. Now that is super. The number of participants fell significantly as years went by. Eventually, it was just Bob, the State Farm superintendent, the State Farm insurance agent, and me who went every year. We always stayed at the same motel. We typically ate at the same restaurants, and there was no carousing. So other than golf and eating, what did we do? Well, our motel was next to a small strip center. We discovered one of the tenants was a small, locally owned ice cream shop, which we would visit 3 to 4 times each trip. As the years passed, as soon as we walked in, the owner would always say, "Welcome, my Peoria golfers." Now, I've been talking about Bob's golf, and I'll be remiss if I did not comment on Bob's golf swing. As I mentioned earlier, Bob was always looking for that perfect driver and that perfect putter, and of course, it's not the club, but the hole. And today, I would ask for a show of hands among those present today who have ever watched a televised Pro-Am golf tournament, and then ask such persons, did any one golfer's swing look particularly odd, unusual, or downright awful? I am confident the answer would be yes, and the golfer would be Charles Barkley, the former professional basketball player. Well, if you saw Bob's swing, you would think Bob's swing was a replica of Barkley's swing, or vice versa. But with one key difference. Bob scored pretty well, and Barkley never did. So there you have it. Bob, the hardworking student. Bob, the family man. Bob, the well-respected attorney. And Bob, the avid golfer with a rather ugly and seriously contorted, albeit effective golf swing. I don't know if Bob ever shot his age, but since he was playing well into his 80s, there certainly was the opportunity. And if he did, I would say, yes, Bob, you are from Metropolis and you are Superman. So, on behalf of my partner, my great golfer buddy, and one great guy, the next time Bob's name comes up, you might be asked to raise a glass and toast to him. But don't do it. Just add a second scoop, some hot fudge, and a cherry on top. Therefore, be it resolved that the membership of the Peoria County Bar Association express our deepest sympathy and sorrow on the passing of our colleague and friend Robert D. Bob Jackson, as well as our appreciation for his life, his dedication to the law, and his friendship. And be it further resolved that the Secretary of the Peoria County Bar Association shall forward a copy of this memorial resolution to his wife Mary Jane, his daughter Deb, and his son Jeff. This is respectfully submitted this 22nd day of May, 2025.
Thank you, Roger. The next memorial is presented for Karen L. Kendall by Timothy L. Birchie.
Thank you, David. May it please the court. And to the family and friends of Karen Lee Kendall, and to members of the judiciary, Peoria County Bar Association, and guests. It is an honor to be with you today and to remember Karen Kendall. Karen was a colleague and partner of mine at Ohio Register of Elkhorn Allen for over 25 years. She was a wonderful and accomplished lawyer who I think left a legacy which is unfortunately not so well known, but which we, as her colleagues in the Peoria Bar, can take great pride. Karen was born in Clearwater, Florida. Her father was a career Air Force pilot, so her earliest years were somewhat nomadic. She lived in 10 different states and territories before she even began high school. Two of her favorite places were Guam and Alaska. Part of her high school years were spent overseas in the Pacific, in part in O'Fallon, Illinois. From the O'Fallon connection, she matriculated to Southern Illinois University, where she obtained a bachelor's degree in philosophy. Several years later, she returned to SIU to obtain a master's degree in American history. And then several years after that, she returned yet again to SIU, this time to obtain a law degree. She was a strong and independent woman, a single mom who worked her way through law school, teaching college English at SIU. Her daughter, Carrie, told me that she recalls her mother bringing her to those English classes and giving her one bit of guidance: be quiet. Karen graduated from law school in 1981 and had the significant honor of being selected to be a law clerk for Illinois Supreme Court Justice Howard Ryan. When that clerkship concluded, she became a law clerk for 3rd District Appellate Justice J. Alloy. In 1984, she moved to Peoria and joined Ohio Register of Elkhorn Allen. She worked for our firm, concentrating in appellate work and heading our appellate practice until her retirement in 2011. Karen was, simply put, an outstanding lawyer. She told people that she became a lawyer to make a difference, and make a difference she did. Whether we measure a lawyer by their accomplishments in their legal work, in their professional activities, in their community service, or in their family life, Karen's life was very well lived. She handled more than 600 appeals in her career, 300 of which had published opinions. 40 of those appeals were in the Illinois Supreme Court. She appeared in all appellate courts in Illinois, some outside Illinois, and in various federal courts of appeal. Her win-loss record was excellent. She handled cases of all types, not infrequently cases of first impression. And her appeals were not just those originating from our firm's cases, but also her reputation ended up such that she was asked to take on appeals of cases tried by others. Justice James Connacht commented to me that, quote, Karen Kendall was a first-rate appellate advocate and made every oral argument an exercise in grace, intelligence, and insight. She elevated every courtroom she entered. I was honored to have her appear before me. Karen was instrumental in developing our firm's appellate department at a time when appellate practice groups in our profession were just getting off the ground. Her vision and willingness to impart a culture of excellence on the department served it well and helped make the firm one of the leading appellate firms in the state for over 3 decades. Karen also believed that honesty and accuracy in the firm's briefs and oral arguments would create a sterling reputation for our firm in the appellate courts. And she was right. In this regard, Justice William Holdridge calls Karen, quote, one of the pioneers in Illinois in developing appellate practice as a distinct subset of the law, both in the practice itself and as a standalone educational pursuit. She helped change the mindset and set high standards for what appellate practice should be. Karen was dedicated to her clients, tenaciously so. Once she had an appellate argument in Springfield. Walking up the courthouse steps, she fell and broke her leg. She was in such pain that she had to be helped to the podium by the bailiff to give her argument. But give her argument she did before she headed to the ER. Outside the courtroom, Karen served our profession in significant ways. She was president of 4 different professional organizations, including the national and prestigious American Academy of Appellate Lawyers and the Illinois Appellate Lawyers Association. She was editor-in-chief of the Illinois Appellate Law Review. She had active roles in DRI, the ABA, the IADC, the PCBA, and the Abraham Lincoln Inns of Court. She served on the Illinois Supreme Court Committee on Civil Jury Instructions. She was a member of the SIU Law School Board of Visitors. She wrote and spoke on legal topics frequently. She also mentored young lawyers within the firm to become active professionally. One of those lawyers told me that, quote, a lasting tribute to Karen was her encouragement to network and become involved in the appellate bar, end quote. He and another colleague in the appellate department each became themselves presidents of the Illinois Appellate Lawyers Association and had distinguished appellate careers. Now, it is true that Karen, from time to time, could be a bit difficult. She was tough, and she had her rules. For example, one never used block quotes in briefs or arguments because they put the court to sleep. However, I think that her uncompromising standards were all in her pursuit of consistent excellence. She did have a certain dry humor. A typical example. Talking one day to one of the younger lawyers in her office, she said that her doctor told her to stop drinking coffee. He asked, what are you going to do? He said, she looked at him like he was a fool and said, I'm changing doctors. Karen was rightfully honored during her career. Among other recognitions, she was included in Best Lawyers in America several years. She was a perennial in Leading Lawyers and Super Lawyers, and she was listed in Chicago Magazine as among the top 100 lawyers and top 50 female lawyers in Illinois. She was named SIU Law School Alumnus of the Year in 1996. Outside of practice, Karen served our community through several organizations, including volunteer reading to small children, empowering women and children were of particular importance to Karen. Karen held a lifelong love for nature and outdoor sports. She ran in marathons, cross-country runs, and she participated in triathlons. She golfed, she biked, she rode horses, and she enjoyed other sports. In retirement, she took up sailing, which soon became a new love, and she sailed throughout the Great Lakes. Karen leaves behind husband Larry, daughter Carrie, 3 grandsons, 4 bonus grandsons, 3 great-grandchildren, and many, many friends. She will be dearly missed. Therefore, be it resolved that the membership of the Peoria County Bar Association expresses its deepest sympathy and sorrow on the passing of our colleague and friend, Karen L. Kendall, as well as our appreciation for her life, her dedication to the law, and her friendship. Be it further resolved that the Executive Director of the Peoria County Bar Association shall forward a copy of this memorial resolution to her husband, Larry Ross, and to her daughter, Carrie Weiss. Respectfully submitted this 22nd day of May, 2025.
Thank you, Tim. The next memorial is presented for Honorable David J. Dubicki by Judge Stuart Borden.
First of all, I want to thank Dave Miller for doing this every year. He does an outstanding job. I want to thank our fearless leader, Kate Gorman, for allowing me to present this memorial resolution on behalf of my friend David Dubicki. To the family and friends of David Dubicki, fellow members of the Judiciary, Peoria County Bar Association, and guests. Dave was born on August 27th, 1951, to Frank and Virginia Dubicki. They were children of parents who had immigrated from Poland and Russia. The Dubickis owned and operated Kitchen-Made Pies. They're located in Peoria. And I'm confident that Dave learned his exemplary work ethic from working with his parents in that business. Dave attended Blessed Sacrament Grade School, then graduated high school from Spalding Institute in Peoria, before going east to attend Trinity College in Hartford, Connecticut. He then continued his education by graduating with honors from Northwestern School of Law in 1976. More importantly, he met Betsy his last year of law school, and they married in 1978. She survives him, as do his children Martha and John, son-in-law Trent Jackson, and grandchildren Parker, Calvin, and Ace. After law school, Dave joined the law firm of Kavanaugh, Scully, Studo, White, and Frederick, and practiced at the Kavanaugh firm, handling a variety of civil matters and establishing a reputation as an attorney who was able to be collegial and formidable at the same time. Dave was still with that firm when he was selected as an associate judge for the 10th Circuit in 1999, and he served in that capacity until his retirement in 2016. He was highly regarded by bench and bar, and his superior intellect and legal acumen were apparent to all who appeared in front of him. He took his judicial responsibilities very seriously and possessed an unwavering code of conduct and the highest integrity. During college and law school, Dave became interested in art and was influenced by the collections of Hartford's Wadsworth, Athenaeum, and the Art Institute of Chicago. His exposure to art in his early 20s led to a lifetime of research and acquisitions of works by German expressionists and modern and contemporary American artists. This resulted in many trips with Betsy to cities throughout the country to enjoy and investigate the vibrant art cultures and museums. Dave's other hobby was hiking, and he kept a log of his hiking achievements, which added up to over 1,300 miles. He took on some of the most challenging trails in Illinois and also in the national parks. His favorite hikes were in Peoria at Singing Woods and especially Forest Park Nature Center, where he was a proud member of the center's 1,000-mile Hikers Club. Dave was known for his wry, quirky sense of humor and his ability to stir the pot. Some of my best memories as a judge were the good-natured most of the time, kidding in the judge's study, and our many lunches together at various downtown restaurants. Dave would question each server in detail regarding his selection, and then he would usually order something completely different. Off script here, I remember one time I told him, Dave, if you just order without asking questions or trying to have a variation in the menu, I will buy your lunch. And he just couldn't do it. He just had to question the waitress. And they, after a while, they liked it. He was funny. Furthermore, Dave was quite parsimonious and was a coupon cutter and proud member of Costco, where he believed that buying merchandise in bulk at reduced prices was the way to save money, even if it might take years to consume the product. Betsy mentioned that she still might have some Nutri-Grain bars left over from one of his purchases. As is true with most highly intelligent people, Dave was very eclectic and somewhat unconventional in his thinking and overall philosophy of life. We're never quite sure what he's going to say on any certain occasion. He was witty and highly entertaining, and one of my favorite people of all time. He is profoundly missed by all those who had the great fortune to know him. Therefore, be it resolved that the membership of the Peoria County Bar Association express our deepest sympathy and sorrow on the passing of our colleague and friend, Dave Dubicki, as well as our appreciation for his life, his dedication to the law, and his friendship. Further, be it resolved, the Secretary of the Peoria County Bar Association shall forward a copy of this memorial resolution to Betsy, Martha, and to John. Respectfully submitted this 22nd day of May 2025.
Thank you, Judge Ford. The next memorial is presented for Arthur R. Kingery by Philip M. O'Donnell.
When I first started practicing law, I always used to remember, as a clerk, I worked at Kavanaugh for a summer. And every week, Dave would say something that would just make me think for the rest of the week. And I thought, where did this guy come from? He's the most interesting lawyer I've ever met. I was like 21. Maybe I was easily impressed. Dave was a great guy. On to Art. The family and friends of Art, members of the judiciary, who are many here today, and our fine bar association, and there are many members here from Art's family. I'm grateful to Dave, chairman of this fine committee, to allow me to do this. And I'm very appreciative to Sue, who nominated me to have the privilege and honor to speak about Art, my former partner. Everyone who worked with Art and knew him and celebrated life with him in a variety of contexts over 5 decades of his practice of law here in Peoria knew probably at one point or another that Art was a self-made man. He grew up with 8 siblings in southern Illinois on a small family farm near a small town known as Montrose, not Montrose. The closest city nearby was Teutopolis. Art was a wooden shoe. Art was proud of his heritage in Effingham County, where he grew up. He learned at an early age to be inquisitive, self-sufficient, and tellingly, which I found fascinating, I never knew this until his funeral. In his senior yearbook, he was quoted as saying his goal in life was to have his own law firm. Art graduated after working his way through the University of Illinois. He graduated from U of I Law School in 1966. He served as an officer in the U.S. Army, reaching the rank of captain, and then left the military in 1969. Art wanted to return to his roots back here in Illinois. He was recruited here in Illinois by a young trial attorney by the name of Bob Strodell. Many of you who are here know Bob to be quite a colorful character. Sometimes Art may have been in Bob's shadow, but they formed the firm of Strodell and Kingery, and they litigated cases for both plaintiffs and defendants. At the time Bob hired Art, Bob was actually doing defense work and not just plaintiff work. At the time, Art had weighed a more lucrative offer, which I heard about at lunch at least once a year for about 27, 28 years that we were together. The more lucrative offer was in Mercer County for a thriving general practice attorney who had been the former state's attorney, who had at the time been a judge. Art decided to take Bob's offer, which was $12,000. The offer in Mercer County, which was, according to Art, the big bucks, was $15,000. That was the year I was born. Fortunately for all of us that knew and enjoyed Art, he picked Peoria over Elenius. Now, a few years later, of course, they hired Ed, and the firm flourished until the early 90s as Strodell, Kingery, and Dubicki. Then they had a little tiff with Bob, and they put up a wall and continued about their merry way. The wall is still there, and when I was hired, I thought the wall was a little obtuse. What is the wall doing here? Well, we used to be partners with that guy, but if you want to see him, you got to go down the hall, and you got to go in the new door. They got the wall up, I think, in about 2 weeks. Commerce Bank acted quick when they said, we're parting ways with Bob. I was looking for a job in Peoria because I had been dating my now wife, and her parents had told her you can't go anywhere with a man unless you're married. And I had a job offer out west, and I had a job offer in Kansas City. Luckily, Art was willing to interview me. The only interview I got in Peoria the summer I was graduating law school. At one of the first days at the firm, I looked around Art's office, and I see this picture behind Art's desk of this old, dilapidated, very small farmhouse. John, his brother, is here today, who's younger by Art than a year, and John clarified for me that it actually was a 3-bedroom farmhouse. Art had always led me to believe it was a 2-bedroom farmhouse. They had 9 siblings. It took me 6 months to get up the courage to ask Art, what is that building or that small little house that you have in this framed picture behind your desk? He was piled up preparing for some work comp trial, and he didn't even look up, and he just says, it's where I grew up, and it's what I don't forget. And literally, I don't think I could concentrate for the rest of the day because it was such an overwhelming thing, because I'd always been afraid to ask Art. He could be gruff at times, as we all know. I was afraid to ask him what the picture was. But as everybody knows, Art did a lot of cases for a long time, and then finally decided jury trials were just too much lack of fun, and he just went into the work comp route. And for years did work for insurance companies, and then Liberty took their work in-house, and Art once was quoted as saying, the best thing that ever happened to me was when Liberty fired me, because then I took all these petitioner cases against him. And he was certain that he did better against Liberty than he did working for him. But Art had a mind like Dave Dubicki. Art could remember any little small technical aspect of the law. And so when I was a new lawyer, if you wanted to know a really nuanced question about the Work Comp Act or the rules of evidence or even the Illinois Municipal Code, if you went in, you could just go in and ask Art and he would know the answer. It was kind of made you lazy if you could just go ask Art Kingery. You didn't have to bother doing legal research. As everybody who spent time outside of the work life knows, Art was a joy and a pleasure to be around. Occasionally we had our debates about how clients' files would be handled, but more often the debates were about politics and things a lot more exciting sometimes than legal work. When I came to town, it's interesting, I think within 2 weeks, Art said to me, lawyers get their business from their reputation, referrals from other clients, and from their skills and acumen. If you ever brought up in our firm, for the first 20 years I worked with Art, the idea of advertising, you would set Art off, and he would be mad at you for a week. Art was a firm believer in not advertising. Now, one thing many of you don't know about Art, even though we're lawyers, is Art became very skilled with his hands on the farm. He would literally upgrade all of our computers in the 90s and early 2000s on his own and install better motherboards in all of our PCs to make all of our computers run faster because his frugality from the farm stayed with him in life. He did not want to hire an IT person. Art and Sue had the fortunate ability to travel the world. I was the only one I knew who sailed on a 2-week cruise from South America to Africa, took a boat trip for over 10 days to Antarctica, and did multiple safaris in Africa. Art was the most worldly traveler I've ever met. Now, whether Sue convinced him to do that, I'm not ever really sure, but they would come back and tell these stories and have these pictures of the most amazing places when I'm slaving away in my office wondering if I've covered my share of the overhead. Now, Art told me once, he goes, Phil, the cruise from South America to the Horn of Africa was the most relaxing thing I've ever done. All I did was look at the ocean for 10 days. And I thought to myself, I'm like, how much relaxation do you need? Art was a generous and kind person. As everybody knows, the card games were legendary, and as Doug reminded me, his skills were not diminished even at 4 a.m. after many, many Canadian mists. Many a Friday morning after their Thursday night card games with that group of what I'll call older lawyers, where we weren't sure if Art had gotten any sleep the night before, but he would come in and he would go do his court cases or his pre-trials for the commission and get his work done. He loved any card game. He always reminded my wife, who went to Iowa, despite everybody in our firm having gone to Illinois, he always reminded her it was okay that you went to Iowa. I think Jenny went to Iowa, if I'm not mistaken. Tell me if I got that wrong. But he acknowledged to my wife once that Iowa college students were better euchre players than Illinois law grads. His love of poker, of course, like euchre, was legendary. I think what also was legendary were his Bloody Marys at the Illinois tailgates. And in our office, one of the things we really enjoyed was our mimosas for our Christmas party. It's usually, Art would break out the bloodies and the mimosas about 9 a.m. Around Christmas, on the Christmas party day, which was, the party's usually at 2, we didn't get a lot of work done in the morning. The rumor was, long before I got to the firm, that Art tried when Nixon resigned, but I can say to all of you here in these terrible political times that Art became more blue as time passed. He did support some of our more recent presidents, and all I'll say is that Art went to his grave enjoying to talk politics, but on the couple days before he passed, I went to see him at the hospital, and he and I engaged in this lengthy discussion about one of my work comp cases because he was my resource. And he was still, his advice was still sage and on point, even at age 82, when his heart had given out on him. Everybody who knew Art enjoyed his company immensely, me included. We miss him at our firm, and I never knew anybody who was as worldly from far southern Illinois as Art Kingery. He had a zest for life that I have tried to hope that I could mirror as I age in my practice. We wish we had Art longer, but after being in the practice for over 56 years, I can truly say that Art was an impressive self-made man. And for anybody who is a younger attorney, if you can ever end up with a life like Art Kingery, you will have a great life. Therefore, be it resolved that the membership of the Peoria County Bar Association expresses our deepest sympathy and sorrow on the passing of our colleague, my partner, and our friend, Arthur R. Kingery, as well as our appreciation for his life, dedication, and knowledge of the law, and his friendship. Be it further resolved that the Secretary of the Peoria County Bar Association shall forward a copy of this memorial resolution to his widow, Sue Kingery, and to his children, Patty, Lori, Jennifer, Josh, and Rena. Submitted this day of May 22nd, 2025.
Thank you, Phil. The next memorial is presented to Kevin William Tilton by James R. Reeri.
Good afternoon. I'm honored to present this resolution on behalf of Kevin Tilton. To the family and friends of Kevin William Tilton, members of the Judiciary, Peoria County Bar Association, and guests. I believe that there is a part of every lawyer that dreams of hanging out your own shingle and being your own boss. Kevin did that, and he had a very tough boss. He was a driven man who pursued excellence in everything he did. Kevin was honest and trustworthy,
and he was not shy in expressing his opinions or criticisms. Kevin and I tangled a few times over the years, but maintained our friendship. I've known Kevin since high school. We both went to Limestone High School. Kevin was a year ahead of me. Kevin was a stellar member of the Limestone High School community. He was vice president of his class his senior year and was active in public speaking. He was an exemplary member of the Limestone speech team and debate team. Kevin won the Illinois State competition for extemporaneous speaking his senior year at Limestone. At the time Kevin was in high school, the Vietnam War was still raging. Issues and topics related to the Vietnam War were a large part of what the debate team and speech team would deal with. I followed in the footsteps of Kevin Tilton on the speech team and attempted to be a good extemporaneous speaker. When I appeared at speech team events throughout the state of Illinois following Kevin's graduation from Limestone, our opponents expected of me someone of similar quality. They quickly learned that I was not of Kevin's stature. Kevin was highly respected in Illinois in the speech team community. This is true. You go to these events and they talk, you're from Limestone. Oh, Kevin Tilton was from there. Kevin later would serve as a school board member for Limestone Community High School. He went on to found and operate county title companies serving the central Illinois area. He was also a real estate developer in the Bartonville area. Kevin was a successful lawyer, businessman, and developer. He made his hometown of Bartonville, Illinois proud. Kevin did his undergraduate work at Bradley University, where he served a term as the student body president. As president, he invited dignitaries such as President Gerald Ford and General Moshe Dayan to speak to the student body. Kevin was a member of Delta Upsilon fraternity chapter at Bradley. It's strange how lives sometimes intertwine. The lawyer that I practiced with when I first was licensed, Rob Bach, was also in Delta Upsilon at Bradley and knew Kevin. Additionally, my roommate, my senior year in law school at the University of Illinois, Mike Tagg, was in Delta Upsilon at Bradley and knew Kevin well. Mike worshipped Kevin and would talk of him often. Rob was, as most of us, if not all of us know, was a prominent member of the Peoria County Bar Association. Mike Tagg was a partner in a prominent Champaign-Urbana law firm. After graduating from Bradley, Kevin attended law school at Loyola University, Chicago. After Kevin had been practicing, he called me a couple of times, indicated that he met a couple of young lawyers who he thought would be a good fit with our firm. Well, we ended up hiring both lawyers, and they both became partners at the firm. He had a good judgment and character. Kevin was preceded in death by his parents, William Boyd Tilton and Joanna Windsor Tilton. He is survived by his two sisters, Karen Al Costello and Kelly Rob Quick, his wife Linnea Bonder Tilton, his children Noah Kevin Tilton, and Zinni Hula Tilton, Adam Kevin Tilton, and his wife Simonida Buskovich, sorry about that, Tilton, and Bray Benea Tilton. And 6 much adored grandchildren, Selma, August, Maxwell, Vincent, Quentin, and Olivia. The grandson of an Italian immigrant who transited Ellis Island, Kevin was a first-generation college student. Kevin dedicated his professional life to providing expert legal services to his hometown and to building a successful title company. In his free time, he was an avid reader, a horse racing aficionado, and a St. Louis Cardinals fan. He'll be remembered by his family for his devotion to his wife, his boundless charm, and his enduring sense of humor. Therefore, be it resolved that the membership of the Peoria County Bar Association express our deepest sympathy and sorrow on the passing of our colleague and friend, Kevin William Tilton, as well as our appreciation for his life, his dedication to the law, and his friendship. Be it further resolved that the Secretary of the Peoria County Bar Association forward a copy of this memorial resolution to Renee Bonder Tilton, the wife of Kevin William Tilton, and to his sons, Noah Kevin Tilton and Adam Kevin Tilton, and his daughter, Ray Tilton. Respectfully submitted. This 22nd day of May, 2025. Thank you.
Thank Thank you, Jim. The next memorial is presented for Thomas J. Penn Jr. by Justin M. Penn.
To the family and friends of Thomas J. Penn Jr., members of the Judiciary and the Peoria County Bar Association, guests, and Chief Judge Gorman, may it please the court. Thank you to the Peoria County Bar Association and to David Miller, Chairman of the Memorial Committee, for the distinct privilege of presenting this memorial resolution in honor of Thomas J. Penn, or Tim Penn, my dad, a man who loved this legal community. I speak on behalf of my siblings, Tom and Chris, who share in a deep appreciation for all this legal community has given us in our family. Our dad's social network was his professional network, and so many of the attorneys and judges in this community were aunts and uncles to us. Many refer to our dad as a throwback, but I think that fails to give him the credit he deserves. He's not so much the product of a bygone era. Instead, he was an influence and created the bygone era with which we associate. Indeed, he helped to cultivate this Peoria legal community that we know today and that he loved so much. First and foremost, our dad loved the practice of law, and he was a great lawyer. He was sharp in his intellect and wit, simultaneously disarming and fully armed for legal battle. His professionalism and charm were his superpowers, and he used them well with clients, judges, juries, and opposing counsel. He loved all aspects of his practice, from going to the prison for an initial meeting with a client, to the press coverage when he ultimately won, always printed without any comment from him. Our dad loved this building. He loved having lunch on the plaza, especially during the spring celebration that our mom organized, which brought so much life and energy and art to downtown. He loved sitting with his friend George, getting a shoe shine. He loved dropping in to see a judge, a practice that he held deep into his retirement. And he loved the staff here, the bailiffs, the clerks, the janitors, with whom he was an equal opportunity kidder. He would joke with everyone he encountered, and he made everyone feel special. We continue to learn new stories from people who worked with him in the building and who adored him, each one sharing their favorite Tim Penn encounter. And he loved most of the judges, especially Judges Gorman and Gorman. He beamed when Kate took the bench, and he beamed more when she was named Chief Judge. He was as proud of her, I think, as her own dad was. Our dad loved working with young attorneys. So many in this community owe their start, or a good portion of their career, to Tim Penn. The words assistant public defender reside on the resumes of many attorneys and judges who now lead this legal community. He instilled in them a reasonable and professional approach to the practice of law. He taught through words and deeds, giving an immense amount of his time and his patience to younger attorneys. Our dad loved being a criminal defense lawyer. He genuinely enjoyed helping people, and although he was the furthest thing from being self-righteous or sanctimonious about his skills, he found deep fulfillment in helping people when they were at their lowest. He approached his clients' problems holistically, always willing to confront the larger problem and correct a misguided life path. He gave his clients what they needed when they most needed it. Perhaps the highest compliment to his ability and his discretion was the fact that so many of his colleagues turned to him in their and their families' times of legal need. He was this legal community's fixer, and he loved that. Our dad loved being public defender. In this aspect, he was a true believer. He loved serving this community and especially loved helping those on whom everyone else had turned their back. The South Side kid in him felt a special pride representing those who could never afford an attorney of his caliber. While I said earlier that he was far from self-righteous, in fairness to the record, he was far from humble about his work as public defender. And while he had a deep respect for the office of the state's attorney, he took a special joy in holding them to their burden. If they couldn't prove someone beyond a reasonable doubt guilty, he believed his clients should walk. He knew that he was on the right side of the V in every case, if only to uphold the integrity of the criminal system. Our dad loved creating a brand for himself. On this front, he was way ahead of his time. Most everyone has remarked about the way he dressed. When double-breasted suits were in, he was wearing one on a 90-degree day, and he was looking good doing it. If cowboy boots with jeans was an emerging trend, he was the first one to wear them at a Bradley game. His offices were comfortable apartments, and he met with clients in a living room surrounded by his press clippings and sports memorabilia. His cars were flashy, and he wore jewelry until it wasn't cool to wear jewelry. His confidence was second to none. Our dad loved giving people second chances. His ability to forgive and his compassion for people defined him. And it was not confined to his clients. He saw the good in everyone, and he seemed incapable of not being gentle to all those around him, even those who disappointed him. He wasn't a pushover, but he extended mercy to everyone he encountered. In this regard, he truly walked the walk. He had a very short memory when people wronged him, which is perhaps the greatest quality an attorney can possess. He was endlessly forgiving. Our dad loved so much about this legal community, and he positively affected every part of it that he touched. I guess in the end, maybe he was a throwback. But he was a throwback in the best sense, with timeless values and impeccable style. But at the same time, he was the one setting the pace and sparking new trends before anyone saw them coming. He didn't follow the current, he created it. He was grateful to know how positive his influence was on those who practiced it. Therefore, be it resolved, the membership of the Peoria County Bar Association express our deepest sympathy and sorrow on the passing of our colleague and friend, Thomas J. Penn Jr., as well as our appreciation for his life, his dedication to law, and his friendship. Be it further resolved that the Secretary of the Peoria County Bar Association shall forward a copy of this memorial resolution to Mary Ann, his wife, Armand. Respectfully submitted this 22nd day of May, 2025.
Thank you, Justin. The next memorial is presented for Wayne L. Hanold by Roger E. Holtzcraft.
Please the court, family and friends of Wayne L. Hanold, members of the judiciary, Peoria County Bar Association, and guests. I'm grateful to the Peoria County Bar Association and Dave Miller, chairman of the association's Memorial Committee, for the privilege of presenting this memorial resolution in honor and recognition of Wayne L. Hanold. I hope I can do justice in this endeavor for Wayne and his family, and understand his widow Steffi and daughter Mitzi are present today. Wayne was born September 7, 1932 in Brighton, Illinois, to Earl L. Hanold and Clara N. B. Hanold. He married Stefania Steiner on July 5, 1958. Was the proud father of 3 children, his daughter Mitzi and 2 sons, Kurt and Todd. Wayne graduated from Southern Illinois University at Carbondale in 1954 with a degree in accounting, and from the University of Illinois College of Law in 1957. Following his law school graduation, Wayne served as a sergeant in the U.S. Army. Following his military service, Wayne worked at the United States Steel Corporation in various capacities. In 1963, Wayne entered private practice with the firm of Westerveld, Johnson, Nickel, and Keller, where he practiced for the next 37 years, retiring in 2000. He was a top-notch attorney, including medical malpractice defense, insurance defense, and general litigation. No, let me restate his skill. He was more than top-notch. He was the best. Wayne served as a managing partner for the firm for many years. I joined the firm as an associate attorney in 1973. Wayne was then serving as the managing partner, and he continued to do so until his retirement. The list of his accomplishments, both as an attorney and in the Peoria and wider community, is long. He was president of our Bar Association from 1980 to 1981. He was president of the American League of Innocent Court from 1990 to 1991. He was president of the Downtown Kiwanis Club from 1978 to 1979. He was president of the Alumni Association of the Southern Illinois College of Commerce from 1954 board in 1955. His memberships in various professional organizations also reflect the breadth of his interests, skill, and experience. He was a member of the Illinois State and American Bar Associations, the Illinois Defense Council, the American Academy of Hospital Attorneys, the Illinois Society of Trial Lawyers, the American Society of Law and Medicine, and the Phi Delta Phi legal fraternity. Now, such positions and memberships are, of course, important and can be significant. But I posit, do they really say anything about the man who holds the leadership position or the membership? Perhaps yes. But one who would not have known Wayne will know a little more about him, other than the fact he held a leadership post in various organizations, or memberships in various organizations. It's my purpose today, and certainly my goal, to share my observations about Wayne and some observations of other attorneys who either practiced with or against Wayne during his long and illustrious career. I tried to come up with a simple yet effective way to describe Wayne. I kept coming back to the same 5 words. Wayne was a good man. What made him a good man? Let me describe the ways. First, of course, he was a devoted husband to Steffi for 66 years. And I quote from his published obituary. Steffi was his best friend and buddy. Was always by her side, his hand in hers, with a constant refrain asking her, "Have I told you today I love you?" Is that not a good man? Wayne and Steffi raised 3 children, Mitzi, Todd, and Kurt, each successful in their own careers. Is a father who raises 3 children to be independent and successful not a good man? How about a person who accepts leadership roles in his profession and leadership roles in his community, and not only accepts those roles, but performs them with skill? Is that not a good man? And how about a managing partner who serves in that capacity for nearly 3 decades in a profession where there are no shrink-in violets and certainly no absence of potential conflicting ideas, opinions, and successfully performs those responsibilities with a fair and even hand, avoiding any rancor or bitterness? Is that not a good man? And how about a man who returns to the small town where he was born and continued as a hobby, farming family farm property with his 2 brothers and with no ongoing contentions, disagreements, or disputes? Is that not a good man? And how about an attorney who was known not only for his tenacity in defending his clients with skill, but also his integrity, reliability, and honesty, all without being loud, pushy, arrogant, or belligerent, goals to which we all strive? Is that not a good man? Let me share a story from one of our long-tenured receptionists. Following a deposition, the opposing party, who Wayne had just deposed, the deponent left in tears. In an effort to be somewhat comforting, our receptionist said to the crying deponent, "Don't worry, he does that to everyone." But not true because he was loud, pushy, arrogant, or belligerent. True because he was always well prepared and skillfully asked penetrating questions. Let me share one very small example about Wayne's role as a managing partner, which also demonstrates his wry sense of humor and the intensity of his defense of his clients. One day there appeared on each attorney's desk a cartoon, a version of which many of you have probably seen. The cartoon depicted a stork trying to swallow a frog, with a frog trying to choke the stork. A rather formidable task both for the stork and the frog. Blazed across the top were the words, "Never ever give up." That was Wayne. And let me share some observations expressed by other Peoria attorneys about Wayne. This is a quote. "Wayne was as tough as a $2 steak, but fair." He is a legend. Absolutely true in the defense of his clients, but in his role as the managing partner, more like a filet mignon. Rare. Another quote. Wayne was always a class act and a model of professionalism. Absolutely true. I never saw Wayne raise his voice or appear angry. Another quote. Wayne was always a formidable advocate on behalf of his clients. His ethics were beyond reproach, and his excellent reputation as a leader in his firm and the bar were well deserved. I say absolutely true, true, true. We should all aspire to emulate Wayne. One more. Wayne Hanold truly represented the best of our profession. Without question, Wayne was worthy of that accolade. While there are other members of our bar association also worthy of that accolade, which is one of the reasons practicing law in Peoria is so satisfying and worthwhile, I know of none who exceeded Wayne's status. In my opinion, the hierarchy of status concerning a person's worth as an individual is topped by being characterized as a good man or a good woman. And in my opinion, one can apply a different characterization when describing the hierarchy of one's profession, trade, or occupation, including for such purposes the potential characterization of being great. Thus, I have no hesitancy in asserting our bar association included one good man in Wayne Hanold and one great attorney in Wayne Hanold. Therefore, be it resolved that the membership of the Peoria County Bar Association express our deepest sympathy and sorrow in the passing of our colleague and friend, Wayne L. Hanold, as well as our appreciation for his life, his dedication to the law, and his friendship. And be it further resolved that the Secretary of the Peoria County Bar Association shall forward a copy of this memorial resolution to his wife Stephanie, his daughter Mitzi, and sons Kurt and Todd. Respectfully submitted this 22nd day of May, 2025.
Thank you, Roger. The next memorial is for Donald R. Jackson, presented by Christopher S. McCall.
Longtime attorney and civil rights leader, Donald R., we know him as Don Jackson Sr., 86 years of age, passed away on November 20th, 2024 in Peoria. A veteran of the U.S. Navy, Jackson dedicated his life to public service. He practiced law for more than 50 years, served as president of the NAACP's Peoria branch 2 decades, and served as president of the Illinois State Conference of the NAACP from 2004 to 2011. Public service was a calling and a birthright for Attorney Jackson. Born on June 26, 1938 in Peoria, Illinois, to Edward Jackson and Kathleen Williams. Attorney Don Jackson descended from one of Peoria's pioneering African-American families. His great-great-grandfather, Thomas Lindsay, came to Peoria as a youth in the 1830s. Lindsay, Peoria's first African-American market master, was part of a small group who in 1871 successfully pushed the Peoria schools to integrate. Henry Gibson, Attorney Jackson's great-grandfather, was a constable and Peoria's first known African-American elected official who also won Peoria's first civil rights lawsuit. Great-grandmother Julia Lindsay Gibson was a businesswoman and founding member of several long-standing local organizations, including the Cutter Women's Aid Club, which organized what eventually became Carver Community Center. Whether in the courtroom or on the golf course, Attorney Don Jackson loved to make a passionate and principled argument. This trait, along with captivating oratorical skills, served him well in his lifelong drive for social and political change. Drive, no pun intended. For me. Attorney Don Jackson was an adept multitasker who was equally focused on combating racial discrimination while building opportunities for others in law, education, employment, housing, healthcare, and of course, politics. In the 1980s, Attorney Jackson formed the city's first African-American law firm, along with now retired attorney Clifton Mitchell and now retired Judge Glenn Collier. Over the course of his career, Attorney Jackson was influential in mentoring or kickstarting the careers of a generation of African-American lawyers and judges, as well as some of the city's most prominent elected officials. Illinois' 2 U.S. senators regularly appointed him to serve on screening committees assigned to review and vet candidates for federal judgeships in the Central District of Illinois. In his later years, Attorney Don Jackson was probably best known for his volunteer work with the NAACP. That work was a continuation of his professional life's work. He had already built a significant private practice by specializing in many of the same issues he targeted with the NAACP, particularly labor law, civil rights, and all forms of job discrimination. Attorney Don Jackson was one of the few attorneys who consistently represented workers and unions in workers' rights cases. He has also worked on cases of wrongful convictions and wrongful arrests. Attorney Don Jackson was a 1956 graduate of Manual High School and later a graduate of Bradley University. In his early 30s, with 3 young sons and his wife's support, Attorney Don Jackson decided to go to law school. At the time, he was a recruiter for the Tri-County Urban League's pioneering labor education and apprentice program called LEAP, which helped more than 200 women and minorities gain union jobs in the construction and building trades. Attorney Jackson married Ernestine Humes on January 21st, 1961, at the former St. Patrick's Catholic Church. She preceded him in death on September 6, 2023. Together, they raised a family and forged a legacy of advocacy and activism, which left a strong mark on this community. Attorney Don Jackson graduated from University of Illinois College of Law in 1974 and returned to Peoria to work for the NLRB. He was also admitted to the Illinois Bar in 1974. A year later, Attorney Don Jackson entered private practice and joined the staff of the Peoria County Public Defender's Office. Attorney Jackson taught part-time at Bradley University, served as a guest lecturer for seminars at agencies such as the Illinois Department of Human Rights, and as a hearing officer for the Illinois Supreme Court's Attorney Registration and Disciplinary Commission. Civil rights and the law were not only his passions. Attorney Don Jackson was an avid golfer who played with the Peoria Progressive Golf Club for many years. He and his wife were founding members as well as board members of the Heritage Ensemble, and Attorney Don Jackson was a former owner of Big John's North with Attorney Doug Stevens, who's around here somewhere. I saw him earlier. And Dr. Paul Morose. He was a member of St. Vincent de Paul Catholic Church. Attorney Jackson was one of Peoria's quiet giants. But few knew the weight he carried on his shoulders. Fewer still knew, and even fewer know now, the battles he waged in pursuit of the greater good for all. He fought to make Central Illinois a more equitable and just home for all citizens. In doing so, he occasionally encountered allies who, though they quietly agreed with his stances, still refused to join the fight alongside Attorney Jackson due to their fear of retaliation. Regardless of whether he stood alone or with the coalition. Retrospective confirms that Attorney Jackson was usually on the right side of the issue. His lasting legacy will remind generations that he was on the right side of history. Attorney Don Jackson was a living embodiment of the adage, life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? For him, sacrifice for the betterment of others was a cornerstone of his life. His personal values, selflessness, perseverance, empathy, and commitment should be prerequisites for civic leadership and are essential to our noble bar's commitment and membership. Attorney Don Jackson sacrificed family time, personal resources, and political prospects for the greater good of us all. Nevertheless, in a November 22nd, 2016 Peoria Journal-Star interview, Attorney Don Jackson said, if there is one thing I regret, is that we've not been able to put a youth organization in the NAACP together. Standing on Attorney Jackson's shoulders, that youth group was launched in 2018 under the leadership of Attorney Jackson's successor, Pastor Marvin Hightower, who is here today in open court. Attorney Don Jackson fought what the Bible calls the good fight, which is rendered the noble agony of the original Greek. The life of the deceased is embedded in the memory of the living and inspires us all. Attorney Jackson, your ideas are still muses for the current generation of leaders and for future leaders to come. Therefore, be it resolved that the membership of the Peoria County Bar Association expresses our deepest sympathy and sorrow for the passing of our colleague and our friend, Hanold R. Jackson Sr., as well as appreciation for his life, his dedication to the law, and his friendship. Be it further resolved that the Secretary of the Peoria County Bar Association shall forward a copy of this memorial resolution to Donald Jackson Jr. and Dale Jackson, both of Peoria, and Derek Jackson of Plymouth, Minnesota. Respectfully submitted this 22nd day of May 2005.
Thank you, Chris. I would just like to take a brief moment now because our next honoree in the 15 years it has been my privilege to conduct this memorial service. This is the first time that we've had this service without him, without his participation, and without his sitting there among the judges. This memorial was prepared for Honorable Richard E. Eagleton by Brian Nemanoff and is presented by Tom Leiter.
Thank you, Dave. As Dave mentioned, Brian was unable to present this today, although he did write this. And it is my privilege and honor to participate in honoring the Honorable Richard E. Eagleton. In Brian's words, I say, the Chief Judge Gorman, other current and former members of the judiciary, friends and guests, I have been given the great honor of drafting and delivering this resolution to a unique and great person, Richard E. Eagleton, more commonly known as Dick or Eagle. Our paths first crossed when I was a young member of the city's legal staff. Judge Eagleton presided over the courtroom with dignity and grace. In later years, we were both retired. We played golf together on Mondays, Thursdays, and on occasional Saturdays. While he was considerably older than the rest of us, he rarely missed an opportunity to tee it up. Moreover, Eagle was the first to reserve a table at the nearest watering hole and was sipping on his Budweiser when the rest of us would arrive. Remember, those are Brian's words. Richard was born June 29, 1930, the son of William and Mary Louise Eagleton. He married Elizabeth Whiff Waterman in 1953. He later married Joyce White in 1994. She survives and is with us today. After graduation from Peoria High in 1947, he attended and graduated from Yale University as a member of ROTC. Interestingly, his freshman Spanish teacher was a graduate assistant named William F. Buckley, the same who became a worldwide political commentator. After 3 years of active duty with the United States Navy, Dick attended the University of Illinois College of Law. He followed both his grandfather and father in the practice of law and was appointed U.S. Attorney from 1965 to 1969 for the Central District of Illinois. He thereafter was a circuit judge for 20 years, with 3 years as a chief judge. After leaving the bench, he was of counsel to the Peoria office of Henshaw and Culbertson, where, among other matters, he spearheaded the modernization of Springdale Cemetery. He is survived by his wife, Joyce Eagleton, children David Kathy Eagleton of Tucson, Margaret Trustin Perry of Fairbanks, and Jeffrey Jennifer White of Austin. Grandchildren Dustin Sidney Eagleton, Matthew Eagleton, David Miller, Carly Miller, Robin Eagleton, Grace White, Avery White, and great-grandchildren Mackenzie Miller, Nathan Miller, and Ivan Miller. He was preceded in death by brothers Lee and Bill Eagleton. The family lineage, however, tells only a part of the story. He was a distinguished naval officer and chief judge of the Naval Reserve Trial Judiciary. He was a lifetime member of an association of former U.S. attorneys. Golf was not only his only sport. He played baseball all his life, including the adult league in Scottsdale, Arizona, during the Cubs spring training. Joyce and Dick traveled widely, including annual trips to the Cubs spring training in Mexico. He was a delightful storyteller, as he had plenty of them. He was a fine person and friend. He said of the 10th Circuit, "The Bar Association is a very friendly bar, both Peoria and Tazewell, so that the lawyers socially get along quite well together, and that shows up in court." Judge Richard Eagleton, age 94, passed away on November 23, 2024, at his Moss Avenue residence, surrounded by his family. Rest in peace, Eagle. Now, be it resolved that this resolution be made part of the permanent record of this court, and that our Bar Association make copies available to his family. Respectfully submitted this 22nd day of May, 2025, on behalf of Brian M. Nivinoff, who could not attend today, Judge retired.
Thank you, Tom. The next memorial is presented for John E. Mitchell by John Lesaganich.
To the family and friends of John E. Mitchell, members of the Judiciary, Peoria County Bar Association, and guests. I am grateful to the Peoria County Bar Association and to David B. Miller, Chairman of the Memorial Committee, for the privilege and honor of presenting this memorial resolution in honor and recognition of John E. Mitchell. John was born on December 12, 1946, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, to the late Ellis and Rita Larson Mitchell. He married the love of his life, Virginia Elwood in River Forest, Illinois, on November 20, 1971. John had two daughters, Judy Naban, married to David Nabahan of Washington, Illinois, and Cynthia Mitchell of Chicago, Illinois. John also had four granddaughters, or has four granddaughters, Libby, Nora, Sophie, and Clara Nabhan, who are all with us today. John graduated from the University of Wisconsin, Stevens Point, in 1969, and the John Marshall Law School in 1974. John relished practicing law and helping others. But if you are to remember John and know what was important to him, you must first learn something about the level of devotion he displayed when acting as husband, father, and grandfather. John enjoyed spending time with family. He was a Cardinals, Brewers, and Green Bay Packers fan. John also enjoyed sailing and strove to teach his children to develop sailors' legs. John was often heard to say that a bad day on the lake was better than a good day in the office. John also enjoyed cooking, concerts, dad jokes, and visiting Wisconsin. John always enjoyed fishing, but he did not always catch fish in northern Wisconsin, Arkansas, or Tennessee. John's family tells me that he was forever dedicated to catching yet another elusive muskie. John Mitchell's daughter, Cynthia, told me that John was simply an amazing father who worked a lot, but never missed the family dinner unless he was traveling for work. John was proud of his children. They were part of his identity, and John instilled in his children the value of self-reliance. John routinely brought work home from the office, as he would often work through the night. In fact, I understand from his family that on occasion John was caught dictating in his sleep. Now that was devotion. John maintained this work schedule until he sustained a heart attack on April 28, 1993. Mr. Mitchell was built to thrive and not give up. John was a devout Catholic and attended church every Sunday at Sacred Heart. Of course, he was accompanied by his family. As a lawyer, John Mitchell was a hard worker, diligent, and enjoyed a reputation for being prepared. John was well liked by his co-workers and professional opponents alike. His approach to law included a projection of calm reason, which I always found to be quite disarming. John knew the facts of his cases and the law as it applied to those cases. He was both a challenge and a pleasure as an opponent. I recall from very early days talking to John and learning of the time he spent working for Wausau Insurance Company. When I first met John about 40 years ago, he was the Assistant Attorney General for the state of Illinois in this district. This meant a whole lot of work without a whole lot of support. But John did it, and did it well. Thereafter, he worked with Henry Netzel and then the Ridge Firm in Chicago, Illinois. John Mitchell walked through life with a graceful humility, which is not always common in lawyers. He balanced family and a hard-working legal career well. John is sorely missed, and I don't know if there will ever again be someone else like John E. Mitchell. I miss him a lot. Therefore, be it resolved that the membership of the Peoria County Bar Association express our deepest sympathy and sorrow on the passing of our colleague and friend, John E. Mitchell, as well as our appreciation for his life, his dedication to the law, and his friendship. Be it further resolved that the Secretary of the Peoria County Bar Association shall forward a copy of this memorial resolution to Virginia Mitchell, the wife of John E. Mitchell. Respectfully submitted this 22nd day of May, 2025.
Thank you, John. The next memorial is presented for Honorable John A. Gorman by Honorable Catherine Gorman.
Thank you, Dave. Probably all wondering, that's my dad's robe. So I wear it on special occasions. So he's here with us today. To the family and friends of Judge John A. Gorman, members of the judiciary, the Peoria County Bar, guests, may it please the court. I am grateful to the Peoria County Bar Association and Dave Miller for the privilege and honor of presenting this memorial resolution in honor and recognition of Judge John A. Gorman. I'm going to honor my dad, who most of you know hails from Flanagan, through some of his favorite quotes, some of them used in syndication, and quotes of some of his friends and colleagues near and dear to his heart. And I'm going to try and adhere to one of Dad's favorite sayings, less is more. Dad was a proud lawyer and judge. He loved our profession and the people in it. Throughout his career, he was known as someone who worked hard and had a good attitude. He was renowned for his legal acumen, his way with people, his ability to resolve problems, and his all-around demeanor. He used his attributes to effect positive change. As the chief judge, he helped spearhead the construction of the Juvenile Detention Center. He shepherded the concept of drug court in both the 10th Judicial Circuit and the federal system. He was an integral part of judicial education, both formally and informally, and he helped countless individuals in the legal profession who struggled with addiction. But he was never too far from his next good time. Some of his best days were spent on the golf course, playing umbrella with his buddies, who went on the annual golf trip to Gulf Shores, or as he liked to say, geezers go south. As a kid, I remember all the phone calls, setting up his regular games, razzing his buddies. The guy loved to laugh. He was also a great friend who was always there for support, a real mentor who had an impact on his friends' lives. And at home, back in the day, he was totally outnumbered. My mom and my two sisters, Kristen and Carrie, we kept that guy on his toes. But he was endlessly devoted to us, our mom and us girls. He was generous of heart and spirit. Anytime one of us had a problem, us girls, later the grandkids, there he was in his chair, ready to give us a pep talk with his sage advice, a good laugh, and how much do you need and when do you need it? After talking to him, you always felt better. I can still hear his voice offing some of his greatest hits. Kate, try hard and have a good attitude. Kristen, there's almost nothing you can't fix. And Carrie, keep it between the white lines. Go along and get along. Timeless classic. And for you Cardinal fans, needling the Cub fans, it's awfully windy out there. Must be a lot of Cub fans. How many of you have heard that before? I sure do miss him. In my mind, right now, he's making the turn on the golf course with his pals, Pat Riley, Ken Black, and Don Corson. He's hitting them straight and his putts are falling. And between games, he's exchanging zingers with his ace buddy, Tim Penn. I bet Dad's smiling from a cloud right now. Judge John A. Gorman made the world a better place for his friends and his family and his profession. May you rest after a life well lived. Dad, it was really exemplary. Therefore, be it resolved that the membership of the Peoria County Bar Association express deepest sympathy and sorrow on the passing of our colleague and friend, John A. Gorman, as well as our appreciation for his life, his dedication to the law, and friendship. Be it further resolved, the Secretary of the Peoria County Bar Association shall forward a copy of this memorial, handwritten in my penmanship, to the family of John A. Gorman. Respectfully submitted, May 22nd, 2025.
Thank you very much, Judge Gorman. Upon reflection, John and I started practice within 6 months of each other. Had many cases together before he went on the bench and thereafter. Played many rounds of golf together. Enjoyed talking about our Cardinals, and after what I would say would be hundreds of hours of conversation, let me be among those who would second what Judge Gorman just said. After talking with John Gorman, you always felt better. The next memorial is presented for William M. Elenius by James F. King.
Thank you, David. May it please the court. To the family and friends of William Elenius, members of the judiciary, members of the Peoria County Bar Association, and guests, I'm honored to present this memorial resolution in honor and recognition of William Matheson Elenius. In addition to being a colleague of mine in the profession, Bill practiced for many years at the firm that is now Johnson, Bunsen Noble, where I now work. Bill was born July 26, 1934 in Chicago to William and Catherine Elenius. He was the oldest of 5 siblings, and he was always a supportive older brother. Bill graduated from Bloomington High School in 1951 at the age of 16. He immediately entered the University of Illinois through the U.S. Navy ROTC program. At the University of Illinois, one of Bill's mentors immediately recognized his extraordinary abilities and suggested that he apply for membership in Mensa International. Bill was accepted, and he was a proud member of that organization for over 40 years. Following Bill's graduation from the University of Illinois, he served in the U.S. Navy for 4 years. For the first 2 years, he was stationed on a destroyer escort. For the last 2 years of his active duty service, he was assigned to the U.S. Naval Academy, where he taught engineering, drawing, and geometry. During Bill's active duty service in the Navy, he eventually rose to the rank of commander. While Bill was still teaching at the Naval Academy, he entered Georgetown Law School. After Bill's discharge from active duty, he served in the Naval Reserve. Bill then transferred from Georgetown University Law School to the University of Illinois College of Law. While Bill was still a full-time law student at the College of Law, he also taught at the University of Illinois College of Engineering. Bill graduated from law school in 1961 in the top 5% of his class. After passing the bar exam, he went to work for the firm of Betty, Newman, and Henniger in Davenport, Iowa. In 1962, Tim Swain Sr. was looking to recruit another lawyer to his firm,
and obtained Bill's name from the University of Illinois College of Law. Bill accepted a job with Swain Johnson & Guard and moved to Peoria. Bill's wife Jackie, however, had to remain in Iowa because she was expecting the birth of their first child. Their daughter was born soon after, and when their first daughter was 10 years old, Jackie moved to Peoria to join Bill. Bill remained at Swain Johnson & Guard for the rest of his career and eventually became a partner in the firm. He had a distinguished career as an attorney, and he was a well-respected pillar of the Peoria legal community. Bill retired from the active practice of law in 1997. Throughout Bill's life and continuing through his retirement years, he loved challenging puzzles, board games, and trivia contests. He enjoyed sharing those passions with his friends and family. Bill's other interests included gourmet cooking, participating in a stock investment club, and keeping up with state, local, and national politics. Bill passed away on December 18, 2024. He is survived by his wife of 66 years, Jackie, his daughters, Christy Engerman and Lisa Nafziger, his sons-in-law, Fraser Engerman and Craig Nafziger, and his granddaughters, Blair Engerman, Brooke Engerman, and Kristen Nafziger. Bill's also survived by his younger brothers, Chuck, Bob, and John. I will briefly share a couple of particular memories I have of my dealings with Bill. Many years ago, when I was a young attorney, I was representing a client who was buying some properties that had been foreclosed on by local savings and loan. Bill represented the savings and loan, and he knew real estate law and foreclosure law very well. I'd been in practice maybe a year or two. I didn't know much at all about real estate or foreclosure. Bill was very patient with me, and he very generously gave of his time to answer my many questions, some of which I'm sure I asked him again and again. The other memory I have of Bill is, those of you who, like me, are no longer young lawyers may remember abstracts of title. Those were documents, hundreds of pages on thin paper, that listed every document that had affected the title of a piece of real estate. If we were representing a buyer, one of our tasks was to go through that, read every document, and make sure everything was done correctly and the title was clear. There was a tradition that when you examined an abstract, you would put your initials on the last continuation. When I would get an abstract to examine and I saw Bill's initials, I was relieved because I knew that it had been thoroughly and carefully gone through, and that if there was anything that it was incorrect in the preceding documents, he had fixed it. Therefore, be it resolved that the membership of the Peoria County Bar Association expresses our deepest sympathy and sorrow on the passing of our colleague and friend, William M. Elenius, as well as our appreciation for his life, his dedication to the law, and his friendship. Be it further resolved, the Secretary of the Peoria County Bar Association shall forward copies of this memorial resolution to Bill's wife, Jackie, and his daughters, Christy and Lisa. Respectfully submitted, May 22nd, 2025. May I approach, Your Honor?
Thank you, Jim. The next memorial is presented for John F. Luck by Bert L. Dancy.
Family and friends of Jack Light, members of the Judiciary, Peoria County Bar Association, and guests. David, thanks for the invite. There's a famous C.S. Lewis writing line, "There are no ordinary people," and it could well be a subtitle for this remembrance, this memorial for Jack Light. I knew him initially when he was hired as a police chief at the city of Pekin. He was a soft-spoken, mild-mannered, thoughtful man, a fine leader, and a good cop. After he was let go there with a change of administration and a new city manager, he took a refresher course for the bar exam, took the Illinois bar after 20 years after passing the Nebraska bar, Creighton Law School,
and he began his practice of law here with us in the 10th Circuit. Peoria and Pekin mainly, PD work, GAL work, solo private practice, housed with some others. Often free with his time and talent. If someone needed help, Jack was willing to take limited payments, beanie babies, pies, labor, or nothing at all. A generous, give a helping hand man, a good guy and a fine lawyer. His obituary reads interesting in a summary way. Born on a farm in Iowa, Creighton undergrad in law school, FBI right out of law school, SWAT agent for a number of years, Omaha, Houston, Atlanta, and then Peoria in '72. He retired after 23 years with the Bureau, police chief here in Pekin, then practiced law with us for 27 years, retiring in 2019. Wife Joan, who died in 2020 after their 58 years of marriage. 4 children, a bunch of grandkids, a loving son, husband, father, and grandfather. All true, but after a wonderful, lengthy conversation with his daughter, Carrie, an ER nurse for almost 20 years, let me fill in for us some more details, some context about my friend and our colleague, Jack Light. Let's start at the beginning. Beginning remarkably that he shared somewhat with his Savior. Jack was a devout Catholic all his life. Jack was born in a barn. That's right. On an Iowa multi-generational family farm 5 miles from nowhere being Harlan, Iowa. It was a cold, late January night in 1939. The heat had gone out at the farmhouse. They couldn't get it fixed to get it warm in there. So his folks went to the barn where there was a reliable wood stove burning to keep the animals warm and safe. They settled down for the night, and their second son, Jack had a brother that was 5 years older, their second son, Jack, arrived that night. The birth wasn't registered for several days later because the snowstorm and the weather delayed registration of their new baby boy. Once they got around to it, his actual birth date was somewhat of a guess. They just I wish I'd had more lunches with Jack Like. I wish I'd gone out to dinner with him and Joan. I wish I had a couple of beers with Jack after work. One of the joys and pleasures of the old 8th Circuit here in central Illinois 175 years ago was hanging out with your fellow attorneys and judges as you rode the circuit, listening to them tell stories and jokes, talking about their lives and their families, getting to know them at the local hotel or the gathering place. Many long years ago. Anyway, Jack grew up on the farm with all its hard work, its good life lessons, its pleasures, rewards, and hardships. Those lessons, hard work, teamwork, respect, helping others, and loyalty stayed with him all the way. School was a one-room schoolhouse some distance away, taught by his mother. He was a good student. I suppose he had to be. He always gave a lot of credit to his mom for her guidance and for his smarts. And when I think about it, in anticipation of talking, that Jack's early childhood was a whole lot more like Abraham Lincoln's than like most of ours. Now, he loved to cook. Learned as a young boy, hanging out with his mom, Leona, in the kitchen at the farmhouse. Later in life, he took great pleasure in frequently cooking breakfast for the family, for the children, the grandchildren, and the great-grandchildren. Serving others again. Helping out. In law school at Creighton, his beloved Blue Jays. And even with a young wife, 2 children at the time, a job working during the week, he still made time to go home to the farm to help with planting and harvesting during those seasons. The day he took the Nebraska bar was the same day he got a letter saying the FBI had accepted him. Kerry said he'd seriously considered being a pediatrician. He loved children, especially babies, but the law won out. The next week, he left for training. 23 years with the Bureau, and not a lot of it behind the desk using his law degree. When the kids asked their mom, after she told him Dad was going to retire, why he was retiring, her reply was, "Daddy's too old to be rolling off hoods of cars." Literally, a metaphor for rappelling out of helicopters, rescuing people in dangerous situations, taking fire, and catching bad guys. Service at a risk to himself. A bit of a mystery man to his 4 children when they were young. They weren't supposed to talk about his job or his travels. His daughter remembers times when on a weekend, maybe the kids would be playing outside in the backyard, Jack would be on the riding mower, barbecue chicken on the grill, then the phone would ring. Joan would be running around throwing things in his duffel bag. Jack would put on his, quote, pants with a lot of pockets, and he would grab his bag, give them all kisses, jump in the old Oldsmobile, and head off. She said if he was gone for a long time, he'd bring them back gifts upon his return. Later, much later on, they got him to tell some of the stories. Just a few here. As a member of the FBI SWAT team, he went to Mount Rushmore in 1973, when the Pine Ridge Native Americans with AIM occupied the sites, and the feds responded. He went to Memphis immediately after Dr. King was assassinated on the 4th of April, 1968, as part of the investigation. On several occasions, he and another agent captured fugitives who were on the FBI's 10 most wanted list. One was, another great story, one was in a donut shop down south in a small town, and he and his partner had just stopped to get donuts and coffee. His partner said to him, "The guy on the phone book looks a lot like the guy on the wall at the office." Sure enough, they approached the guy, ID'd him, and took him outside to the ground to subdue him. As Jack told it, several patrons, older ladies with canes or umbrellas, unaware of who the bad guy was, started hitting Jack and his partner for abusing the poor man who was just having a donut and coffee. Another high-profile case involved Barbara Mackle, who in 1968 was kidnapped and buried alive by her kidnapper. Later wrote a book, and then a movie came out, I believe, 83 hours before dawn. Large manhunt to find her, and it was Jack and his partner who ended up finding her buried in a wooded area north of Atlanta, an electric pump for oxygen in the box, the would-be coffin she was buried in. They rescued her, and the perpetrator was found and later prosecuted. More stories to be sure. Joan wasn't exaggerating with her daddy too old to be rolling off the hoods of cars. So while in Jack's middle years, he blended hunting and fishing with the kids, soccer games, family life here in the Midwest, with, as Carrie mentioned in her eulogy, being shot at, rescuing women and children, and catching fugitives. On his lunch hours here at the Peoria office, he would frequently stick that sandwich that Joan had fixed for him and that he brought to work in his pocket, and he'd walk a couple of blocks over to Sacred Heart, and he'd go to church there over the lunch hour, and he'd eat his sandwich on the way back. There are no ordinary people. I will close here where Carrie closed at his funeral service, her words. Family and faith were his foundation to his life and what we were taught by him our whole lives. My dad loved babies, and if there was a baby around, he was holding them. He had a special bond with each one of his grandkids. He would just sit with them and tickle their little toes and sing "This Little Piggy Went to Market." He would color with them, make them waffles with strawberries and Cool Whip, and was always swinging them on the swing set. He loved each and every one of us. They say grandparents shape generations. If that's true, all of the grandkids are in good shape. We will miss you, Dad. You were our best. We thank you for all the support, guidance, and love you gave us. Yes, Jack Like, we will miss you too, and we're glad you came our way. Amen. Therefore, be it resolved that the membership of the Peoria County Bar express our deepest sympathy and sorrow on the passing of our colleague and friend, Jack Like, as well as our appreciation for his life, his dedication to the law, to his country, and to his friendship. Be it further resolved that the Secretary of the Peoria County Bar shall forward a copy of this memorial resolution to Jack's family. Respectfully submitted this 22nd day of May, 2025.
Thank you, Bert. The next resolution is presented for Linda Reeri. This is only the second time our association has had the privilege of honoring someone who lacked a law degree and did not actively practice as a member of our profession. It is my decided pleasure to speak on behalf of Linda Reeri, who served for more than 22 years as the Executive Director of the Peoria County Bar Association. Linda took office in 1998 when Julian Hanold was president. She continued as our Executive Director until 2020, when she resigned following the term of Mike Gifford. During her 22 years, Linda steadfastly supported each administration and was invaluable to each association president during and throughout that president's term. Upon learning of Linda's passing, each of the surviving presidents was notified of this celebration of her life, and many are here today or watching as the service is streamed. Every one of these past presidents, including myself, acknowledges Linda's service to our association, and particularly her competence in furthering its interests both within the bench and bar and before the public. To say that Linda was competent sells the term short, as everyone who served or worked with her well remembers. Linda came willingly to each assignment and accepted each responsibility and task, however great or slight, with enthusiasm. Nowhere was her combination of competence and diligence better expressed than in our association's annual Lincoln Day banquet. It was an event which she organized, oversaw, and during which she hosted a number of speakers, including members of the Illinois Supreme Court, judges of the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals, and United States senators. This memorial service serves two equally important purposes. First, it enables members of our profession to remember and celebrate the honorees' involvement in and service to the law in this association. Second, but of equal importance, it allows those within the profession to learn who our departed friend really was and how she came to share in our lives. Linda Reeri was born Linda Jones in Galesburg on March 29, 1956. She was the daughter of Norma and Harley Jones, who moved soon thereafter to Brimfield, where Linda went to school graduating from Brimfield High School in 1974. From her family background, it appears that Linda enjoyed high school theater, which is consistent with her love of music and singing throughout her life. After graduating from Brimfield High School in 1974, she came to Peoria, attending Illinois Central College, where she concentrated her studies in typing, secretarial programs, and banking operations. While attending ICC and thereafter, she worked at the Commercial National Bank from 1974 through 1980, and thereafter for Bradley University in its Liberal Arts and Sciences department. While at Bradley, she gathered a background in the university's urban affairs and research department between 1980 and 1984, which thereafter served us well. Linda married Donald Reeri II in 1984 and thereafter moved with her husband, who was in the Navy, to Norfolk, Virginia. While there, she had 2 children who became the focus of her life. In 1986, her daughter, Angela Reeri Thomas, was born, followed in 1987 by her son, Donald Eugene Reeri III. Much of what I say today regarding Linda's personal history and life was provided by her children in loving remembrance. Those thoughts include her activities at home, such as sewing, gardening, and baking. Going back to her earlier high school years, she was creative and thoroughly enjoyed painting, drawing, and singing. Religion always played a significant part in Linda's life. Starting as a volunteer at Bayview Baptist Church, Linda came to recognize a calling in the use of her education to better the lives of others. She was a member of the El Vista Baptist Church until her death, where she sang in the choir, served as a nursery attendant, bus driver, and member of the Awanas Christian Service League. Before following Leela Post as our executive director, Linda was a legal secretary and assistant to a number of attorneys and firms. Starting in 1989 with Swain, Johnson, and DeGard, Linda worked with our profession until 1998 through employments with Jim Rochford, Westervelt, Johnson, Nickel, and Keller. In each instance, those attorneys uniformly used the terms competent, professional, considerate, conscientious, kind, and upbeat in describing Linda. Perhaps those memories are best summarized in identifying her as a problem solver with a great disposition. As each of us who worked with Linda remembers, she was even-tempered and never once lost her cool, despite an over 30-year experience and exposure to lawyers. During her tenure as our executive director, Linda participated in bringing about a number of the association's programs and traditions. She was actively engaged in the formation of its first diversity committee in 2003. The next year, she organized and hosted the Peoria County Bar Association's first diversity luncheon. Flowing from those efforts came our annual diversity scholarship. Linda was also instrumental in working to establish the PCBA Foundation Fellows Program. Toward that end, she also worked to further the long-standing tradition of this memorial service. While the event and its recognition of departing fellows preceded her by over 70 years, Linda was integral in suggesting the continuously updated memorial plaque that hangs in the association's offices and bears the name of each departed attorney. She also furthered the contributions that are sought, along with the notification of each member's passing, as I'm sure many of you see when the correspondence comes in. Linda also furthered the PCBA's charitable outreach in the community. In that regard, she encouraged our participation in the Habitat for Humanity of Greater Peoria Area House of Love project. Nor should we forget her encouragement of the association's tornado outreach program for the city of Washington following the 2013 tornado. It has been a privilege for me to offer these kind thoughts and memories of our friend and fellow servant to the law, Linda Reeri. I am confident that each of the Bar Association presidents with whom she served shares my sentiment that Linda was a friend to our association and its members whose memory we cherish. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the membership of the Peoria County Bar Association express not only our deepest sympathy and sorrow for the passing of our friend Linda Reeri, but also our appreciation for her life. Be it further resolved, a copy of this memorial resolution be presented to the presiding judge of the 10th Judicial Circuit, Peoria County, Illinois, with the recommendation and request that it be spread upon the records of the court. Be it further resolved that the Secretary of the Peoria County Bar Association forward a copy of this memorial resolution to her daughter, Angela Reeri Thomas, and her son, Donald Eugene Reeri III. That concludes our formal memorial presentations. It's a sad year in the sense that usually we honor 8 or 9, and this year we had a total of 15. Again, these are persons upon whose shoulders we stand as we go forward in the practice of our profession and the administration of justice. As is traditional in this event, we open the floor now for those who are here to share their thoughts, observations, and memories of the persons whom we honor. There is also a reception in the Renaissance Room on the 3rd floor of the Jansen building following the completion of the memorial service. One advantage that I get by hosting the event is that I can kick off the reminiscences and the observations which others join in. And as I regret to say, most of the honorees are persons with whom I practiced and had a close association, including the trial of many lawsuits. And I hate to contradict my friend Roger Holtzcraft, but he said something here that I made a note of when he was talking about my friend and colleague, Wayne Hanold. He said that Wayne, in the most trying of times, was known not to raise his voice or appear angry. Well, I have a specific contradiction of that, which is one of the more memorable experiences in a lifetime of trying cases. When I started in the trial practice, I practiced with John Cassidy Sr., not Jack Cassidy, but his father, who at that time was 76 years old. And I thought, at that time, that's old. And one of our lead clients was the Toledo, Peoria, and Western Railroad Company. So we tried crossing cases, FELA cases, Fair Labor Act railroad cases. In fact, as did Wayne on behalf of, I think, the P&PU. Well, we had a big death case, and it involved a construction worker who was hit by a TP&W train going across a private crossing. A private crossing is one where a farmer has his land on one side, bisected by the railroad tracks, and his land on the other side. So he has a private crossing, like an easement, allowed by the railroad so that he can go from one field to the other. Well, this was a construction project, and the decedent, Mr. Spring, was an employee of the construction company that went to the farmer, and they had a project a short distance on the far side of the railroad tracks. So they went to the farmer and said, we will pay you if you'll let us use your private crossing. And of course, the farmer said yes without checking with the railroad. One day, as this construction worker was going, he didn't look down the tracks and was hit by the train and was killed. So the suit came, and the suit was against the TP&W and also against the farmer. Now, to say that the railroad was outraged because they are being sued because this farmer allowed the construction worker to use their private crossing is an understatement. And for those of you who knew and remember John Cassidy Sr., he was an advocate's advocate, and when the railroad was outraged, that's saying it mildly, for him. So here we have this death case, railroad crossing case, and the farmer and the TP&W are at odds. Now, for those of you who defend multi-party cases, you know that the defendants fighting amongst themselves only does a grievous injustice to both. So it became my job to talk to John Cassidy Sr., see if we couldn't make peace. And so I talked to Wayne. He said, you'll never get the general. That's what John was referred to as. He's a former attorney general. You'll never get him to agree. I said, let me try. And so I talked to him, and I talked to him, and I talked to him. And finally, with a great deal of reluctance, he agrees. We aren't going to point the finger at the farmer for the use of the private crossing. And we pick our jury, and we get to the opening statement. And John is giving the opening statement. And I'm going to say that Roger is Wayne, and John there is the farmer sitting next to him. And so John is approaching the jury, and he's talking about this construction worker and contributory negligence and how he appreciates the jury being willing to sit in this case. And then all of a sudden, I can see his ears start to burn. And he turns like this, and he points at the farmer, and he says, "And this Judas for his 30 pieces of silver." And you want to see Wayne Hanold come on in. There it went. So at the recess, I say, "Wayne," he said, "don't talk to me. Don't talk to me." And so we fought that case all the way through. And the end result was, much as I regretted, it ultimately went to the Illinois Supreme Court. The jury came back against the railroad, but exonerated the farmer.
Yeah, well, David, you told me that story when you called to ask me to present it. So you took the bait today.
I couldn't resist, and the trial judge in that case, and there may be some of you who remember Ed Hagen's. He was a wonderful, wonderful trial judge. He did a marvelous job, and it's the only case that I ever got a JNOV on, and he entered judgment on the post-trial motions in favor of the railroad. Now, of course, we went up ultimately to the Supreme Court, and they undid all of his handiwork, but that was the ultimate outcome. So I did see Wayne angry. Anyone else have some thoughts or comments? Yes.
I will be
Jim,
brief.
yes.
I will be brief. I want to say just two things. One, this is such a magnificent, magnificent tradition. I learned of this tradition 8 years before I came to Peoria, 7 years, because my mother's maiden name was Ott, and her brother, Jack Ott, died in January of 1971 and was memorialized here. And she received the transcript. It was a wonderful thing to do that. And I'm so proud to be part of this organization that promulgated this. I just want to also say that I came here in 1978, end of July, waiting to hear what the results of the bar exam were, began practicing. There were so many people here that we've talked about. Bob Jackson, Karen Kendall, maybe Dubicki, Kevin Tilton. People I crossed swords with, Wayne Hanold, or worked with. I was fortunate enough that I worked with Ray Rose for a couple of years. And he and Don Jackson became partners. And I got to know Don Jackson. Admired his intellectual strength and his passion for what he did as a lawyer. He made me proud to be a lawyer. Made me proud to be here. Dick Eagleton, Eagle, tried a lot of cases with him early in the mid-'80s when I started out trying to go out on my own, and I got felony judges to appoint me when Penn's office had a conflict. I wanted the cases. I wanted to learn to try cases. I wanted to try cases. After I went to work with Ray, he didn't like it. I was doing that because the county was paying me $10 an hour. It was the best experience I had in travel. Dick Eagleton, he was a judge that showed me the ropes in more ways than one. But there were three other people here I just want to briefly mention. One was Arthur Kingery, who I worked with under for approximately 5+ years. Bob Strodell, I called it in retrospect my 5 years before the mask. But great training. And I always respected Arthur.
though we parted on some challenging circumstances, he honored me by some years later, late 90s or early 2000s, referring me to a medical malpractice case. And I was greatly honored and humbled by the fact that he would have had that kind of trust in me, and it meant a lot to me. Now, let me tell you this. And the other two people I want to talk about are two people that took on caring for an inquisitive 25-year-old lawyer who sought advice from the best people he could find, John Gorman. They both became mentors to me. They didn't laugh at me when I asked them about the cases. And I was trying to figure out what to do. Who should I go to? What lawyer should I talk to? Later on, they were mentors to me. I could pick up the phone and call them and talk about a problem or a question. And always, they were there and willing to do that. Magnificent. I owe a lot to them. I owe a lot to all of my experiences since 1978, standing in this court.
Thank you, Jim. Any other thoughts?
David, may I make some brief comments?
Absolutely, please.
Everybody goes impossible, but these will be brief. I just want to say to Don Jr., who was my bailiff last year that I was here as a circuit judge, that I miss your mom, Ernestine, your dad, very much. And I had lots of cases with your dad, and they were always fun. But I do want to talk about one person who never blows her own horn. John, in the General Assembly the last couple of years, I've gotten to watch Kate come in with the Chief Justice of the Illinois Supreme Court to present the Supreme Court's budget. Kate is the first woman chief judge here, and she is the chief judge of all of the chief judges in the state of Illinois, and accompanies the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court into the General Assembly to present their budget. John, you couldn't be happier. Well, there you go, kid. I'm the only person that ever served on all three courts with John. Circuit Court, Appellate, and Federal. John's favorite sentence that after we adjourn in the appellate court was, "That person is smarter than a tree full of owls." That's one he always says. Never said it once about me. But John was a mentor at all three levels. Now the other one I have to say, I don't know how many of you here appeared in Dick Eagleton's court in 1974. I was interned with Mike Milne. He assigned me to Dick Eagleton's court. I spent my summer watching Dick Eagleton as a second year, about third year law student. Never thinking that I would be in this courthouse. But in 1988, I was elected to the circuit court, and then Bob Manning shocked everybody, I'm sure, some will remember, taking a Marshall County judge who's only been here 6 months and putting him in felony court. Dick was here. I was on the other side of the wall. He started to mentor me. Then we both get the honor of going down the second floor to the new annex. We were the first two felony judges in the new annex. I beat Dick by 1 week to have the first jury trial in the annex, but he did it about 4 days later in the other room. Never thinking that Dick would continue to be a mentor. So in 1998, while I was a federal judge, he gets me into sort of a secret society that I can't tell you about, where we had lunch with others every month from 1998 to October of last year. November came, you can look in here just before Thanksgiving. We had an event early in November. I came to have dinner with Dick. He always saved his spot. I always saved his spot. And he wasn't there. And I asked one of the people, I said, "Where's Dick?" I said, "He fell." And then shortly thereafter, he passed. But I need to tell you one thing. This was, to me, the most important thing Dick Eagleton ever said. As we finish our beers and drinks in October, he's ready to leave, and he said, "Mike, Joyce is the best thing ever happened to me." The last thing he ever said. Thank you.
I'm Neil. I am a disciple of Mike McCuskey. One thing I won't do, won't be quite use as many words. Linda Reminiscences. She worked with me, with Bob Jackson, with Kevin Elder, and if that didn't make her run away screaming from all of us, well, you know, she was just the best. And, you know, having to deal with the three of us for a couple of years before she took this job is living proof that she was the very soul of discretion, and she had the patience of Job. But I want to say one thing. She used to organize the table settings at the Lincoln Memorial, and Mike knows the woman that was the beneficiary of one of those flower place settings. My mother-in-law, Edith Sankin, you remember Edith very well, Mike. She was in one of the nursing homes here. My wife took that place setting to the nursing home, and every day until it faded, my mother-in-law would say, "This came from the Bar Association." And everybody really, it meant something to all of them in that nursing home. So she extended the goodwill of this Bar Association into people that you've never met. But it meant something to them. It meant something to my mother-in-law, and she was just the best. Thank you.
That was her nature and our blessing. Yes, Mike.
Mike Leifert, as you said earlier, I was Linda's last president, and with all the kind words about Linda that I've heard, the one that I haven't heard yet is tireless. She worked harder, longer, more dedicated than just about any person I ever knew. As I was coming up through the ranks, I had to tell her more than once, "Lady, go home. Get out of here. You've been here 30 hours already today." She was just absolutely amazing in that regard.
Yes, Mike.
Mike Fleming. I, like several of the others who've spoken, I'm fortunate enough to have a lot of connections with those who are remembering today, both in and out of the Bar Association. Some of them, like Don Jackson, was my law school classmate. We came back to Peoria together. He was a dear friend along with his wife Ernestine. I'm glad Don is here to see this and spend time with the rest of us in the courthouse here in his job as bailiff. A couple of others, and all three of the judges were honoring. I have some stories I could tell, but I'm not going to. So, Karen Kendall was a good friend. We spent a lot of time in the Inns of Court together. I had the honor of getting to run the hills and streets of Seattle, downtown Seattle, with her when we were out there on a convention. She was just a wonderful person and a great appellate attorney, as Tim said. Those two in particular, but the one I really wanted to mention was Hank Gentry. I don't know that Hank was nearly as involved in the Bar Association over the years as a lot of us have been, but he and I particularly got to know each other in the JCs, and I joined the JCs in '77 and '78. I'd seen what a dynamic organization it was, all the things it was doing in the community, and I had observed the fireworks in Boston in 1976, the bicentennial fireworks over the Charles River, and I thought that was really cool. And then I saw the weak little display they had out at the stadium, and I think in '78 they didn't even do anything in Peoria. And so I went to the JCs one day and said, I think we ought to see if we could do fireworks over the river. I think that'd be cool. And everybody thought that was a good idea. And as the way we did things in the JCs, we'd appoint someone and get a committee going to look into it. And Hank, who's a JC as well, volunteered, and he and another gentleman were the co-chairman for a whole year looking into this. They did a ton of work in touch with the city, the Department of Transportation, the Coast Guard, all kinds of other government entities. And after a full year, they came back and said, guess what, guys, we think we could do this. And so we spent the next year, and Hank was chairman for the next year as well, putting together the actual plans for the fireworks. And then in July of 1980, the fireworks came to fruition. And I can still remember we had a lot of stuff in the afternoon. We were down there at 5 or 6 o'clock at night at Equity Park, and there weren't very many people down there. And we had vendors who were complaining because they'd set up and no one was there. Pretty soon we start seeing some people coming down the streets, and soon it was more and more, and I think Rick said maybe 100,000. I don't think the first year there were that many, but we did hear at least 40,000 people they were standing on the Franklin Street Bridge. They were in East Peoria, they're all in downtown Peoria, and it came off without a hitch, and for the next few years we ran that before some of the other organizations in town took over. So in many respects, Hank was, I would consider him the father of the downtown fireworks. So next time you have a chance to see that, think of him, please.
Thank you for that observation. That simply emphasizes the point that we here today stand on the shoulders of those whom we honor. The reception will continue across the street, where there will be libations and the hors d'oeuvres. May it please the court, may we adjourn?
We may. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you, Jack. Have a great one. We'll see you, okay?